There is a particular cruelty to stress in animals that cannot communicate it directly. A dog that is anxious will pace, will whine, will seek you out and press against you and make its discomfort legible in ways that are hard to ignore. A cat will hide, will vocalize, will change its behavior in ways that read as behavioral change even to owners who are not paying close attention. The communication is imperfect and it requires interpretation, but it is present. It crosses the distance between the animal's experience and your awareness with enough force that most owners, most of the time, register that something is wrong. A bearded dragon does not have those tools. It does not vocalize distress. It does not seek you out when it is suffering. It does not change its behavior in the dramatic, attention-demanding ways of social animals evolved to communicate need to members of a group. It sits in its enclosure, in the same place it sat yesterday, looking approximately the way it looked yesterday, doing approximately what it did yesterday, while something inside its nervous system or its body or its environment runs a quiet emergency that nothing in its behavioral repertoire is built to announce. This is not a failure of the animal. It is the product of a specific evolutionary history. A prey animal in the Australian interior that visibly communicated distress was a prey animal advertising its compromised state to every predator within range. The bearded dragon that survived was the one that kept its distress silent, that maintained the behavioral surface of normalcy while the internal state deteriorated, that gave nothing away to the environment that could be used against it. That capacity for silent suffering is still in the genome of every captive dragon alive today, running on a nervous system that was built for a world where showing weakness was fatal. What this means for you as a keeper is that the stress signals your dragon produces are not designed to reach you. They are designed to be invisible. You have to go looking for them with the specific knowledge of what they look like and where to find them. The owners who find them early are the owners who know what they are looking for. The owners who do not find them are not inattentive or uncaring. They are simply looking at an animal that is very good at not being found. Welcome to Reptile Realities. Subscribe before you keep watching, because this channel is about giving you the observational tools to see past the behavioral surface and into what your animal is actually experiencing. Stay through all 6, because the last sign is the one that arrives earliest in the stress timeline and disappears into the background most completely. The one that has been present in your dragon's environment for weeks before any of the others appear. Number 1. The color temperature is wrong, and you have stopped seeing it. Color in a bearded dragon is a language, and like any language, it has a grammar. There are rules about which colors appear in which contexts, and violations of those rules are meaningful if you know the grammar well enough to recognize a violation. The rule for a healthy, genuinely relaxed bearded dragon in a correctly managed thermal environment is this: warm and relaxed produces pale. A dragon that has reached its working body temperature, that is not in a social or threat interaction, that is settled in the middle portion of its day, should be at or near its lightest color. The melanophores are contracted, the pigment is concentrated. The skin reads pale, sometimes almost white in the beard and ventral surface, with the characteristic warm tones of the dorsal coloration present but not deepened. Chronic stress violates this rule in a specific and consistent way. The autonomic nervous system, running the low-grade activation of a sustained stress response, keeps the melanophores in a partially or fully dispersed state, regardless of the thermal context. The dragon that is warm, that has been basking for 2 hours, that should by every thermal logic be pale, is instead carrying a color that is a shade or two darker than it should be. Not dramatically dark, not the flat black of an acute threat response, just wrong. Just slightly off in a way that is easy to dismiss as individual variation or lighting conditions or the particular mood of the moment. The problem is that this slight wrongness is constant. It is there in the morning and in the afternoon and after basking and during calm periods when nothing in the environment is producing a social or threat trigger. It does not resolve because the thing producing it is not a passing stimulus. It is a persistent condition, an enclosure element or a social stressor or a husbandry problem that is keeping the autonomic nervous system at a baseline activation level above what genuine rest would produce. You stop seeing it because you see your dragon every day, and the color it is today is close enough to the color it was yesterday that the difference does not register. This is why photographs matter. Photograph your dragon in the same lighting conditions, in the same thermal context, on the same schedule, and compare photographs taken weeks apart. The color that has been slowly deepening over a month is invisible in daily observation and obvious in a side-by-side comparison. Number 2. The tongue flicks have changed in frequency and pattern. The chemosensory behavior of a bearded dragon, the tongue flicking and surface licking that allows the animal to sample chemical information from its environment, is one of the most sensitive behavioral indicators of its ongoing assessment of that environment, and one of the most consistently overlooked by owners who have normalized it as background behavior. A dragon in a stable, familiar, low-stress environment flicks its tongue with a characteristic frequency and pattern that reflects ongoing but not urgent environmental sampling. It is checking in with the chemical landscape of its enclosure at a rate that is consistent with a nervous system that is curious rather than alarmed, that is maintaining environmental awareness rather than actively scanning for threat signals. Chronic stress changes this pattern in one of two directions, and each direction tells you something different about the nature of the stressor. A dragon that begins tongue flicking more frequently than its established baseline, that samples surfaces it has sampled thousands of times before with a renewed urgency, that seems to be perpetually reinvestigating its environment as if the information it has already gathered is insufficient or unreliable, is a dragon whose nervous system is in a heightened state of environmental monitoring. Something has changed, or something is present that the animal's chemical sampling system is trying to identify and categorize, and the effort to do so has elevated the baseline tongue flick frequency above what settled familiarity would produce. A dragon that tongue flicks less than its baseline, that has reduced its environmental sampling to below what even a settled, uninterested animal would produce, is showing a different sign entirely. This suppression of chemosensory behavior occurs in animals that are in a more advanced state of stress withdrawal, whose nervous system has moved from heightened monitoring into the conservation mode of an animal that has been managing a threat response for long enough that energy conservation has become a priority. This is the later stage of a stress response that the elevated frequency was an earlier stage of. If you have noticed the elevated frequency and waited, the suppression is what comes next. Establish your individual dragon's baseline tongue flick frequency during settled midday periods. Count the flicks in a 5-minute observation window. Record the number. Do it weekly. Departures from that number in either direction are information. Number 3. The body chooses the wrong end of the enclosure. Bearded dragons thermoregulate by choosing their position on a temperature gradient, moving between the warmer basking end and the cooler retreat end of the enclosure in response to their internal thermal state. In a correctly set up enclosure with an appropriate thermal gradient, a healthy dragon spends the morning primarily at the warm end, cycles through intermediate positions during the day, and settles wherever its thermal needs in the moment dictate. The position is always a thermal decision, always the body voting with its feet for the temperature it currently needs. Chronic stress interferes with this thermal decision-making in a specific way. The animal that is running a persistent stress response is an animal whose nervous system is prioritizing threat assessment over thermoregulation. The warm end of the enclosure, the basking spot, is often the most exposed position in the enclosure. It is elevated, visible, open. It is the position that requires the animal to present itself to the environment most completely, to be most visible to whatever the animal's threat assessment system has identified as a concern. An animal under chronic stress will avoid the basking spot, or truncate its time there, not because it does not need the heat, but because the calculus of exposure versus concealment has been shifted by the stress response. It will spend more time than the thermal logic would dictate at the cool end, in corners, under hides, in the positions that offer the most concealment even at the cost of the thermoregulation it needs. The result is an animal that is chronically underheated relative to its needs, which compounds the stress response by impairing the immune function and digestive efficiency that correct body temperature supports. Watch where your dragon chooses to be, not just whether it basks, but for how long and at what time of day, and whether it returns to the basking spot voluntarily after the first warming session or stays at the cool end for the remainder of the day. The animal that basks briefly in the morning and then retreats to the cool end and stays there is showing you a positional pattern that the thermal logic alone does not explain. Number 4. The shed is telling you what the daily behavior is hiding. Skin condition and the quality of the shedding process are long-term integrators of the animal's physiological state. They do not reflect what happened today or yesterday. They reflect the accumulated conditions of the past several weeks: the nutritional status, the hydration level, the hormonal environment, the immune function, the overall systemic health of the animal during the period when the skin now being shed was developing. A shed tells you the history that the daily behavioral surface conceals. Chronic stress elevates cortisol. Chronically elevated cortisol suppresses the immune system, reduces nutrient absorption efficiency, impairs cellular repair and regeneration, and affects the quality of the integumentary system, the skin and scales, in ways that become visible during the shed. The shed of a chronically stressed animal is characteristically different from the shed of a genuinely thriving one. It comes off in small pieces rather than large sections. It adheres to the underlying skin more than it should, requiring extended soaking to release. It may be retained in patches across multiple body regions simultaneously. The skin underneath it, when it does release, lacks the brightness and color saturation of a healthy shed, presenting instead with a flat, dull quality that reflects the compromised cellular renewal beneath it. The toes and the tail tip are the canary in the enclosure for shed quality. These are the areas where retained shed accumulates first, and where the consequences of chronically poor shedding, constriction of circulation, tissue damage, eventual loss of the distal segments become visible earliest. A dragon with chronically poor shed quality at the toes and tail tip has been telling you through every shed cycle that something in its environment or its physiology has been insufficient to support proper skin renewal. The shed cycle is approximately 4 to 6 weeks in an adult dragon. Every cycle is a report on the preceding period. Read it. Number 5. The eye contact has changed. There is a quality of visual engagement that a healthy, genuinely relaxed, bearded dragon has with its environment and with the people in it that is distinct from the visual engagement of a stressed animal, and the distinction is in the character of the attention rather than the presence or absence of it. A dragon in genuine positive state makes what experienced keepers describe as direct eye contact. It looks at you with a focused, present quality that feels across the enormous cognitive distance between your species and its, like being seen. The eyes are oriented toward you, and the attention behind them is engaged. It tracks your movement with the smooth, continuous tracking of a visual system that is working without interference, that is following a stimulus of genuine interest through its visual field with the relaxed precision of an alert but unthreatened animal. Chronic stress changes this in a specific way. The stressed animal's visual attention has a different quality. It is scanning rather than focusing. The eyes move across the environment in the continuous, rapid, restless pattern of a threat assessment system that is running above its baseline activation, checking and rechecking the visual field for changes that might indicate danger. When it does focus on you, the focus has a different quality from the direct engagement of the healthy animal. It is harder to describe than to recognize, but experienced keepers describe it consistently as watchful in a way that is different from curious, alert in a way that is different from interested. The animal is looking at you to assess you, not to engage with you, and the distinction is present in the character of the attention even when the direction of the eyes is the same. This sign requires a calibrated baseline to read. You need to know what your individual dragon's visual engagement looks like when it is well and settled before you can recognize the departure that stress produces. But once you have that baseline, the change in the quality of the eye contact is one of the most immediate and reliable stress indicators available because it is a direct readout of the activation state of the nervous system that is producing it. Number 6. The morning response has slowed and you have adjusted to it. This is the sign that arrives earliest in the stress timeline and disappears most completely into the adjusted baseline, the one that most owners have normalized without realizing they have normalized it, the one that has been present for weeks or months before any of the more visible signs appear. A healthy bearded dragon in a correctly managed enclosure responds to the lights coming on in the morning with a characteristic speed and quality of arousal. The eyes open, the head comes up, Within a defined and consistent window of time, the animal orients toward the basking spot and begins the morning warming sequence with the purposeful, directed movement of a system that is ready to function. The morning arousal has an aliveness to it, a quality of engagement with the transition from night to day that reflects a nervous system that has genuinely rested and is genuinely ready. Chronic stress degrades this morning response in a way that is gradual enough to be completely invisible in daily observation. The animal that used to orient toward the basking spot within 10 minutes of lights on is now taking 20. The animal that used to be visibly alert and engaged within the first hour is now spending 90 minutes in a semi-settled state that looks like prolonged morning sluggishness. The aliveness of the morning arousal is muted. The engagement comes later and with less of the quality that characterized it before. You do not notice this because each day is almost the same as the day before, and you have adjusted your expectation of what morning looks like for your dragon to match what morning has gradually become rather than what it was before the stress began. The baseline has shifted, and you shifted with it, and now the degraded morning response is simply what your dragon does in the morning and has always done, as far as your current memory of normal extends. This is why the written record matters more than the observational memory. Write down the time from lights on to first oriented movement toward the basking spot. Write down the time from lights on to what you would describe as full morning alertness. Do it every day for 2 weeks and you will have a number. Then do it again 6 weeks later. If the number has increased, the morning response has slowed, and the slow morning response has been telling you something about the animal's overnight recovery and its baseline nervous system activation that the daily observation was not equipped to catch. The stress your dragon carries is quiet because silence was survival for every ancestor it had. The signals it sends are not designed for you. They were designed for a world that did not include you, a world where any signal of weakness was a signal to predators, where the animal that concealed its distress most completely was the animal that lived to the next morning. You are not a predator, but your dragon's nervous system does not fully know that yet. And even the dragons that have moved closest to genuinely trusting a specific person are still running the ancient software underneath the habituation, still producing stress responses that were built to be invisible. Your job is to see them anyway, to look past the behavioral surface that evolution optimized for concealment and find the signals underneath, the color that is slightly wrong, the tongue flick frequency that has shifted, the position that the thermal logic does not explain, the shed that is reporting the history the daily behavior hid, the eye contact that has changed its quality without changing its direction, the morning response that has slowed so gradually you adjusted to it without noticing. They have been there. Your dragon has been sending them, in the only language its biology built for this purpose, into an environment that was not designed to receive them. Now you know how to receive them. Tell me in the comments which of these 6 signs you recognized in your own dragon and how long it had been present before you saw it for what it was. Your experience is the thing that helps another owner catch it earlier. I read every single one. See you in the next video.